Marvel Rivals, the new kid on the block in the hero shooter genre, but this time taking all your favorite cash cows and pitting them against each other. Being developed by NetEase Games, a China-based developer most notable for releasing mobile games. Having previous experience with Marvel, but on much smaller scales, those being a still in development MOBA, only released in a select few countries, and a collectible card game and battler also not globally released. So when I learned this information and the announcement trailer dropped looking like this, I will say I was laughing while watching it. The jarring art style that made it look like they were going to turn Marvel into Genshin Impact, and the cheesy dialogue with questionable VA choices, and the slow, stiff-looking combat that's not helped by the people demoing, seemingly playing a shooter for the first time. To put it loosely, it was not looking good in my eyes. So when I found out they were doing a closed beta, I had to sign up, just to quench my morbid curiosity, and well, I was pleasantly surprised. While not in a state I would say it's done and dusted and ready to ship, it's in one I feel is stable and polished, where the vision can be realized for the player. A problem that many multiplayer games fall into now when doing alphas or betas, as first impressions really do matter, so when a game like the Finals or X-Defiant have a rocky beta with bugs and crashes galore, that becomes the game's image. Running on Unreal Engine 5, I get the sense that the studio has the talent capable of handling UE, being able to strike a balance between visual fidelity and the optimization needed for a competitive game. The whole alpha, never once did I see the FPS drop below 60, even when streaming and recording. On Game Pass, the title scene were presented by the main menu. Front and center, the Battle Pass. For now, in the betas, it's free, but I expect on release for that to change. From it, you can earn player icons, emotes, sprays, skins, and in-game currency. On release, I would not be surprised if the unlocks get padded out once more money is involved. Onto this, you have your daily and weekly missions to earn XP towards the Battle Pass. Speaking of currencies, there's also a skin shop, which will most likely be transformed into a real money shop. Going back to the menus, you can access the hero menu displaying each hero. So far, 19 have been shown, but teasers show more are on the way. Upon clicking into them, you can customize them by giving them skins, emotes, or sprays, and even read up on their lore through paragraphs of deeply written content. In this beta, we got a peek of their competitive infrastructure, the Faction and Tournament tab. In the Faction one, you can, join a faction, allowing you to participate in the tournaments, with the streaming infrastructure already up and running, and on the main menu having links to live channels, in the vein of like CSGO and CS2. This first tournament, Dawn of Legends, was open to all factions and already came with a $22,500 prize pool. Finally, you get into the Play tab, giving you all the options to, actually play the game. Currently, these options include the Practice Range, a place to test out all your heroes, their attacks, their support capabilities, and their team-ups. Custom matches, where you can create a customized match to play with or against your friends. Pocket Universe, a game mode where you have access to respawns at flexible locations with the goal to eliminate as many players as you can. This is most similar to your traditional team deathmatch mode. Finally, you have your basic quick match, and then a competitive queue, sharing similarities to their counterparts in any modern multiplayer shooter in the last decade. In its current state, there are only 3 game modes, spread across 3 maps in 2 locations. Asgard, taking place in the golden glory of Asgard, fused with Yggdrasil, the World Tree, and with Loki fighting for the throne. Within this location, there are 2 maps for 2 different game modes. Yggdrasil Path. It contains your basic convoy mission, one team defends, one team attacks. Attackers have to take the cart to the end with 2 checkpoints along the way. Looks the same as in Overwatch and Team Fortress 2. A Royal Palace. Your basic domination game mode, 3 rounds on 3 separate sub-maps, first 2 points wins, same as in Overwatch and Team Fortress 2. Tokyo 2099. The next location is the urban sprawl of Tokyo 2099. After a tear in the multiverse appears, crossing our heroes with those of the 2099 Spider-Verse. Within this location, there's only 1 game mode and thus 1 map. Shin Shibuya contains the game mode Convergence, which plays like, a convergence of domination and convoy, with 1 team attacking, 1 defending, but the attacking team must first capture the starting point before the convoy can begin. Very much again like Overwatch. As of right now, there's nothing unique in the game modes presented, as all seem to be lifted from Overwatch. What Marvel Rival brings to the table for the maps being more of a flair, that being the semi-destructible environments, which don't seem to have a negative impact in performance, but has some gameplay impact, as it's hard to tell what part is destructible, certain parts being semi-buggy, especially roofs, as they don't seem to be destroyed, and will land on top of you and be in your way. And with the hologram rebuild animation being solid, means you can see the enemy but not attack. In the future, I hope for them to branch out and bring/create brand new game modes to distance themselves from their very close rival Overwatch. with these hopefully being unique game modes, not just ones we've seen in other games. Possibly being able to draw upon the 85 years of comic and cinematic history Marvel has created. The other unique thing that it brings to the hero shooter genre, other than the third-person camera and indestructible environments, is a system called team-ups. This system works by pairing heroes together on one team. Through it, you gain new abilities or skill-ups. With there so far being only 7 team-ups, not every hero has a team-up, with some even having multiple. Team-ups can go from being a nice addition when possible, but not mandatory to run those heroes, to abilities or things that should just be part of the hero's base moveset, to almost mandatory to run that hero, such as in the case with Magneto and his team-up with Scarlet Witch. This is one of those things that is not groundbreaking, that most likely not going to be a trend showing up in other hero shooters or shooter games, but something that helps Marvel rivals from just following in the shadow of Overwatch. And as more heroes are added, it will present new and interesting teammates and gameplay styles, but as it is now, it's not totally noticed. This section will be a bit longer given that there are already 19 heroes in the alpha alone, but I wanted to show as much as possible, so if you want to skip right to the conclusion and my wrapping up points, go to this timestamp. This section should also be chapter divided and the timecodes in the description, so if you want to see a specific hero, use those. With Hulk, you have his main attack, his left click, which does a heavy blow melee attack forward. His right click is a ranged gamma burst. His E ability is a radioactive lockdown, a ranged attack that immobilizes the enemy for a period of time. This includes flying enemies, causing them to come crashing down. On shift, he and nearby allies gain an indestructible guard that will absorb damage, converting it into charge for his ultimate. Speaking of his ultimate, he gains Hulk Smash, where he transforms into Monster Hulk for a limited period of time, gaining increased damage and attack speed, also giving you an animated move that locks the enemy you grab into an animation. Hulk's movement is a charged leap using space. Now drawing back to the Overwatch comparisons, let's say in the event you get killed as Hulk, well, you would transform back into Bruce Banner, much in the way as a Diva from Overwatch. As Bruce, you get a pistol and are faster and more agile. Build up charge to Hulk out again. He also in shift gets a bounce grenade that bounces the target you throw it at. It also does slight damage to the enemies. He is also 1/3 of the Gamma Charge team-up. Brink Castle wields 2 weapons that can be switched between with the number keys or the scroll wheel. The first being an automatic rifle, and the second being a shotgun. With his right click, he throws out a Scourge smoke grenade, with his E ability placing him into a fixed turret mode, much like Overwatch 1 Bastion. His shift is his mobility ability, giving him a zipline to string across a map. For his ultimate, he gains Final Judgment, where he gains 2 Gatling guns and auto missiles. His passive, Warrior's Gaze, gives him quote-unquote wall hacks, where he retains vision of an enemy via an outline for a short duration after they disappear from view. This also works for his Scourge Grenade. He is 1/2 of the Ammo Overdrive team-up, gaining a buff of infinite ammo and faster firing while in the radius of the Ammo Overdrive device for its limited lifetime. Storm on left click launches out a piercing wind blade, while on right click she smites the enemy with a bolt of lightning. With E, she gains a Goddess boost, which depending on which mode gives 2 separate boosts. These modes can be switched between using shift, with the Tornado granting her and allies in the AoE a movement boost, while the Thunder grants a damage boost and periodically smites enemies in the AoE. For movement, other than the boost, she also has the ability to hover. For ultimate, she transforms into an Omega Hurricane, drawing in nearby enemies and dealing massive damage. Loki, the God of Mischief. On left click, he fires out a mystical missile that deals damage to foes but heals allies. On right click, he becomes invisible, leaving a conjured illusion in his place. This invisibility lasts until he attacks, takes damage, or switches bodies. Much like his deceptive evade, he can use an E to place an illusion without becoming invisible. His illusions are able to mimic his actions. To swap between his illusions, look at the desired illusion and press F. Loki has a unique melee, that being his V ability, in which he stabs an enemy with a dagger. He deals extra damage if it's a backstab. Loki is classified as a support hero after all, so other than his ranged heals from his missiles, on shift he and any illusion cast a regeneration domain around them, with all damage taken by an ally in the AoE being converted into healing energy. Loki's God of Mischief ultimate is that similar to Echo from Overwatch, in which he shapeshifts into the targeted ally or enemy hero, getting access to abilities and an ultimate for a limited period of time. Loki is part of the Ragnarok Rebirth team-up, wherein when Hela lands a final hit on an enemy, if Loki is alive, he gains some overshield, but if he is dead, she instantly resurrects him. The Sorcerer Supreme, Stephen Strange on a left click casts out the daggers of the Nath. They deal massive damage, but are in limited ammo capacity and not hit scan, so perform like Kiriko from Overwatch's kunais. Right click is where his utility comes out, as he is classified as a tank. He conjures a protective shield with 800 points of damage. He is able to lead the charge much like Reinhardt. For mobility, his shift activates a Cloak of Levitation, boosting him into the air and supplying him a brief state of flight. His F utility, however, while not unique in concept, is unique in execution, as it's your run-of-the-mill teleporter, like what you get with Symmetra or Engineer. However, visually is unique as it gives you a porthole view of the other side and you step right through, seamlessly teleporting to that location. Occasionally due to the third-person camera, it can be a bit disorientating, but nevertheless, visually stunning for a competitive shooter. As part of his passive, on every hit of an enemy he accumulates dark magic, symbolized on the back by his cape, but if it is not released, he will enter a state of anti-healing. To release said dark energy, you can use his E ability, Maelstrom of Madness, in which he releases dark energy as an AoE. For his ultimate, he activates the Eye of Agamotto, freezing all enemies in the AoE, much like a Maze ult, with their souls separating from their bodies, and it's by damaging their soul form that you deal damage to them. Strange is part of the Gamma Charge team-up, getting increased damage for his Maelstrom of Madness ability. For a left click, Mantis fires at a Life Energy Blast. On shift, she fires a spore that upon striking an enemy sedates them. This includes flying enemies, bringing them to the ground. Mantis' unique gimmick is that she has a store of life orbs. These life orbs are used for abilities. These such abilities are Allied Inspiration. Bound to E, it consumes life orbs to grant allies a damage boost. Natural Anger. Bound to F, consumes life orbs to grant Mantis herself a damage boost. Healing Flower. For right click ability, it consumes life orbs to grant allies healing over time. For her passives, she gains a movement boost when not injured and healing over time whenever she consumes a life orb. For ultimate, Soul Resurgence, releases energy around her while moving, providing a movement boost and healing boost for any surrounding ally. Brash Trash Panda holds a Gatling gun that fires on a left click. For his right click, he shoots out healing orbs, a bit of a mix between Baptiste Alt Fire Mode and a Moira healing orb. On E, Rocket throws out a rebirth location that, while active, can revive one fallen ally, as well as periodically spearing out armor packs that add overshield. As for movement, Rocket has plenty of options. As a passive, he is able to run on walls if you hold space. He has a 2-charge jetpack dash bound to shift, and his other passive allows you to slow fall by holding space. This can be combined with either his jetpack or his wall crawling. For Rocket's ultimate, he deploys a Cosmic Yarn Amplifier. It deploys a lot like Baptiste's Immortality Field, but instead of deflecting incoming damage and healing, Rocket's Amplifier grants allies a damage boost. Rocket is part of 2 team-ups. As part of the Ammo Overdrive team-up, Rocket only supplies the Ammo Overdrive device for the Punisher using Z. However, as part of the Planet X Palace team-up, Rocket is able to ride on Groot, and while doing so, receives a damage reduction. Hela, the Goddess of Death, Queen of the Underworld. On her left click, she does a ranged attack where she throws Nightsword Thorns out. On right, she throws a 4-Thorn Barrage that have a delayed detonation for that extra damage. Bound to E is her Soul Drainer ability, in which she projects out an explosive sphere that also stuns and draws in nearby enemies. One of her passives, Now Strong Crowstorm, generates an explosive crow upon Hela defeating an enemy. As for movement, that's where her shift utility and second passive come into play. On shift, she transforms into a flock of crows, able to glide through the air, with pressing shift again, undoing the transformation. And her second passive, giving her a slow fall if you hold space. As for ultimate, the Goddess of Death makes her soar into the air with her left and right click attacks, and turn into producing explosive Nastron crows that will explode on impact, doing AoE damage. As for team up, she is part of the Ragnarok Rebirth team-up, but she gains no buffs and only supplies possible overshield or revive to Loki. King T'Challa of Wakanda. On left click, doing a slicing melee attack. This has a bit of range to it. On right click, he manifests a spear, throwing it towards the enemy, doing damage and also putting a force field around them temporarily, attaching a vibranium mark to an enemy within. He is very much a movement character, and many of his abilities meld damage with movement, such as his spinning kick. Down to E, with the chalice spirals forward towards an enemy, damaging them on contact and attaching a vibranium mark. Sprint Rend. Bound to shift, where he lunges forward, dealing damage to the enemy, and if he hits an enemy with a vibranium mark, he gains bonus health and his abilities refresh. Finally, for movement, he is able to run on walls by holding space, and when he detaches from the wall, he does a jump. His passive makes him deal more damage when at low health. Bass Descent, his ultimate, summons Bass, the Panther god, who pounces forward, damaging enemies and attaching vibranium marks. Black Panther does team up with Magik as part of the Limbo shortcut team up, allowing her to spawn a portal which he can also use. On left click, he launches a ranged vine attack. On right, he throws an explosive spore bomb that after the initial explosion splits into multiple smaller spores. Groot is classified as a tank hero, and given defensive walls that work like May walls, but have some extra abilities. He gets 2 Thorn Slash walls and 1 Ironwood wall. Thorn Slash walls are grown using shift, and mixed with his Flora Colossus passive, allows him to awaken his walls when close. When awakened, the Thorn Slasher walls will strike any nearby enemies that Groot is actively attacking. The Ironwood wall is grown with E, and has more health than the Thorn Slashers, and when it is awakened, grants Overshield to Groot when nearby enemies take damage. Groot's ultimate, Strangling Prison, is a massive vine cluster that he fires and pulls nearby enemies into it, imprisoning them. Groot is part of the Planet X Palace team-up, where Rocket is able to shoulder surf on him. Ileana, wielder of the Dark Arts, holder of the demonic Dark Child. On left click, she slashes her soul sword. On right click, she charges a ranged air slash. Her E ability, the Umbral Incursion, and forward dash, where she launches an enemy that she comes in contact with. Magik is all about movement. She's given as her shift ability 2 stepping discs, so short range teleports. With these stepping discs come some unique left and right click attacks that are available only after exiting one. On left click is the Eldritch Whirl. Upon exiting the stepping disc, she does a wide whirl attack with Soul Sword. On right click is Demon's Rage. When used, she summons a Limbo Demon that attacks enemies. Magik is balanced by being a bit of a glass cannon. She only has 250 health. This can be mitigated to a degree through her passive, as she converts the damage she inflicts onto enemies into Overshield. For ultimate, Ileana transforms into Darkchild, gaining enhancements to her abilities, such as general damage buffs and her Soul Sword Slash and Limbo Demon having a greater attack width, allowing for multiple enemies to be hit. As part of the Limbo shortcut team-up, she can spawn a longer distant and longer lasting portal than what she gets with her stepping disc. Dazzling her enemies, for Luna's left click, she fires out ice shots that damage enemies and heal allies. On right, she coagulates water and chucks it at enemies, freezing them for a short period. On shift, for 5 seconds, she fires a barrage of ice shards damaging enemies and healing herself and allies. For E-bound utility, she's able to attach an idle aura to an ally and heals them when Luna heals a different ally. Her first passive, Cryo, combines with her shift and right-click bound abilities. When those are cast, Luna automatically restores health. Her second passive, Smooth Skates, supplies her with her movement, where after a bit of time moving forward, she begins skating, gaining a slight speed boost and looser side-to-side controls. For her ultimate, she takes center stage, placing an AoE around her, where depending on the mode, allies within it gain certain benefits. On the health cross, allies within are healed. When we switch to the 2 arrows up, allies' damage is boosted. This is similar to Lucio from Overwatch. Luna bridges the gap of water and ice through being part of the chilling charisma team up with Namor, infusing her ice energy, powering him up. Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist Tony Stark, better known as the Invincible Iron Man, for his left-click attack, fires nano pulses towards the enemy, dealing damage to the main target and slight splash damage to any surrounding enemies. On right-click, he fires a Unibeam out of his arc reactor. Using E, he activates his Armor Overdrive state, which enhances the damage of his Repulsor Blasts and Unibeam. Down to F is his Micro-Missile Barrage, usable when in overcharged state or flying. For movement, Stark enters a state of forward flight when Shift is pressed, and leaves that state after it is pressed again. By default, he hovers with up and down movement being bounced to space and control respectively. For his ultimate, he fires a devastating pulse cannon that when hitting, deals catastrophic damage in an AoE. Stark is part of the Gamma Charge team-up, infusing Gamma Radiation with his Armor Overdrive, increasing his damage. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man is classified as a 5-star on the difficulty scale for playing. This stems from him being a movement hero through and through. On left click, he performs a forward strike. On right click, he shoots at a web cluster, dealing damage and attaching a spider tracer. On E, he shoots out webbing, which reels the enemy towards him, or if they're tagged with a spider tracer, he will instead be pulled to them. His attack bound to F is an uppercut that launches the enemy upward, and if they're tagged with a spider tracer, they take extra damage. His first passive is his spider sense, giving him an early warning of enemies in the area. Movement, Spider-Man's bread and butter in this game, is all about agile, quick, in and out strikes, outmaneuvering his enemies through his web swinging, wall crawling, and on-foot movements. Upon double-clicking space, he gains a double jump. This pairs well with his web swing bouncing back, allowing him to swing around the map, and cancel by pressing shift again, allowing him to dive into fight with the momentum gained by the swing. His second passive allows him to press shift to crawl on vertical surfaces, and while crawling, pressing left click makes him run. For his ultimate, he jumps into the air, launching web clusters all around, damaging and stunning enemies. Master of Magnetism, leader of the Brotherhood, Magneto. On left click, he fires out an iron volley. On right click, he converts the rings on his back into metallic mass he launches forward. With the higher the stack of rings on his back, the more damage it does, with a full stack's charge even knocking back an enemy. Filling the role of a shielding tank, on shift, he creates a magnetic shield out in front of him, lasting 4 seconds with a 15-second cooldown. For his E ability, he forms a protective bubble around a chosen ally, much like Zarya in Overwatch. With the damage taken by this bubble being turned into the rings on his back, he uses for his mag cannon attack. For his passive, he simply gets the ability to slow fall while holding space. For his ultimate, he floats up into the air, forging a massive iron meteor that does massive damage in an AoE around its impact. Teaming up with Scarlet Witch, a fellow Brotherhood member, in the Metallic Chaos team-up, Scarlet Witch infuses him with Chaos Energy, gaining him his enchanted greatsword that gets him 3 mid-range sweeping attacks. Wanda Maxima, Harnesser of Chaos Energy, the Reshaper of Reality, Scarlet Witch. On left click, she has an almost beam weapon, as by holding it down, she, much like Moira from Overwatch, sucks the life out of the enemy, recharging her Chaos Energy. Where on right click, she consumes that energy to fire out explosive magic missiles. Once again, drawing back to Moira comparisons, for her shift utility, she can enter a ejection state, where to the enemy she appears to blink out of existence. For Wanda's case, however, she is in that state for much longer and gains a full state of free flight. This, combined with her slow forward passive by holding space, makes up her movement tech. As for her E utility, she fires out a Dark Seal which generates a force field that periodically stuns enemies within range. For ultimate, she is set into free flight while charging up a spherical AoE attack radiating from her that deals massive damage. She is one half of the Metallic Chaos team-up with Magneto, but she gains no buffs from it, only powering him up. Hailing from an Evangelion-inspired universe, she fights in a mecha named Spider, which was once piloted by her father, Peter Parker, before his death in combat, leaving her to pick up where he left off. On left click, she uses the 2 massive cannons on Spider's shoulders to fire out cyber web clusters. On right click, a cyber web snare is fired out of the mecha's wrist, immobilizing any enemy hit or placing a cyber web if hitting the environment. On F, she fires out a web strand that links with a cyber web, allowing her to get pulled in closer. On E, she deploys a spread of arachno mines. These minefields can be concealed under her cyber webs. On Shift, she generates a bionic spider's nest that periodically spews out bionic spiders. Her passive is of course wall crawling, as any spider person should be able to do. For ultimate, the spider suit becomes enhanced for a short period of time, transforming into the spider sweeper, knocking back enemies in his path and spewing out arachno mines, bionic spiders, and cyber webs repeatedly. Peter Quill, the legendary Star-Lord, dazzling his foes with his signature swagger. On left click, firing his dual element guns at high speeds, looking and feeling a lot like Tracer from Overwatch. Using E, he becomes a Beyblade, firing a frenzy of shots within a 360-degree range around him. On right click, he is able to dodge in the direction of movement while swiftly reloading. Closing out his movement on shift, he uses rocket propulsion to boost himself forward. For his ultimate, he enters free flight while gaining Soldier 76's tactical visor, meaning he auto-locks onto enemies in sight. King of Atlantis, ruler of the 7 seas, he is the almighty Submariner, or just Namor. On left and right click, his primary attack is to toss his Trident of Neptune towards the enemy. Both have a secondary effect on one of his abilities. This ability is his E-bound utility, where he summons an autonomous monster spawn that attacks enemies, with 2 being able to be out at the same time. On left click, if the trident contacts with an enemy, the cooldown of his next spawn is reduced. On right click, it directs any of the monster spawns to perform an enhanced attack on the nearest hit enemy. On shift, he summons a protective barrier while flying upwards, shielding himself, but also disabling his movements and abilities. For his ultimate, he calls upon the sea, summoning Giganto to leap atop enemies, dealing damage in an AoE around the impact. Bridging the gap between water and ice, Namor teams up with Luna Snow as part of the Chilling Charisma team-up, where she infuses her ice energy into him, powering up and keeping him bound to see a third monstro spawn. Overall, like I said earlier, Marvel Rivals really surprised me. I came in thinking it was going to be another cash grab license game that stomps all over the established characters with the differing art style, but it totally blindsided me by being a competent and, dare I say, enjoyable shooter, and with the way Blizzard keeps shooting themselves in the foot with Overwatch 2, a worthy competitor. It can however not go without saying that the clone title is not totally inaccurate, as the inspiration lifted from Overwatch is not small, with many hero abilities having Overwatch counterpart, or the 3 game modes in the game being those in Overwatch. That is to say, I hope to see them branch out more, bringing new ideas to the genre, especially in the game modes department, but they very much could also not, as to make it an easy switch for Overwatch players. But I tell you, I am looking forward to following the future development of the game, since I already see teasers for a whole host of new heroes, and the next closed beta test is kicking off on July 23rd, so I will for sure be playing that. I also stream over on Kick and on YouTube Shorts here, so if you want to catch me live there, that would be greatly appreciated.